George Soros is a name that echoes with immense power and controversy. He is a billionaire investor born in Hungary who survived the Nazi occupation and later fled communist rule. He made his fortune in the high-stakes world of global finance, most famously by shorting the British pound in 1992, an act that earned him over $1 billion and the title, "The Man Who Broke the Bank of England." But his story did not end with financial conquest. Instead, he pivoted, transforming his vast wealth into a tool for shaping the world according to his vision of an open society. This essay is about that transformation. It is an examination of the vast, intricate machine he built to dispense his fortune, and the profound influence that machine now wields across the globe. Soros represents a modern form of influence, one where a single individual, operating outside the formal structures of government, can direct billions of dollars to alter political landscapes, social norms, the outcomes of elections. The core of the controversy is not just about one man's intentions, whether noble or nefarious. It is about whether any single private citizen should possess the capacity to exert such a powerful gravitational pull on our collective destiny, a question that strikes at the heart of democratic principles. To understand the Soros phenomenon is to follow the money. It is a journey that leads from the boardrooms of Wall Street to the front lines of activism in dozens of countries. The vehicle for this journey is the Open Society Foundation's projects, partners. This network has become one of the largest philanthropic enterprises in human history, spending over $1 billion annually. Its stated goals are laudable: promoting democracy, protecting human rights, advancing justice. But the methods it employs and the outcomes it produces are the subject of fierce debate, raising critical questions about accountability, transparency, the very nature of power in the 21st century. The story matters because it is a case study in the mechanics of modern influence. The strategies pioneered and perfected by the OSF, funding civil society groups, supporting independent media, training activists, financing legal challenges, have become a blueprint for how wealth can be translated into political and social change. While supporters see this as a vital counterbalance to authoritarianism and corporate power, critics see it as a form of stealth politics, a way for an unelected billionaire to impose his ideological agenda on sovereign nations. The central nervous system of the Soros network is the Open Society Foundations. It is not a single entity, but a constellation of national foundations, regional foundations operating in over 120 countries. Soros created the OSF in 1979. In 2017, he transferred $18 billion from his personal fortune to the foundations. That made it the second largest philanthropic endowment in the U.S., after the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. The structure lets OSF operate globally with a budget that can rival small nations. Money flows from this central endowment to organizations worldwide, forming a complex web of financial relationships that can be difficult to fully trace. OSF's grant-making is extensive and diverse. Billions go to human rights organizations. Human Rights Watch, Amnesty International. Funding supports groups that monitor elections and groups that advocate government transparency. Significant funding goes to public health initiatives, harm reduction programs for drug users, palliative care. The foundations are major funders of higher education. Central European University in Budapest, later moved to Vienna. Scholarships to thousands of students. Supporters point to this as evidence of building stronger, healthier, more educated societies. But a substantial portion is directed at explicitly political goals. OSF invests in organizations pushing for criminal justice reform, immigration rights, climate action. In the U.S., Soros backs groups like the ACLU, Planned Parenthood. He has also poured tens of millions into super PACs supporting Democratic candidates and causes. This political spending is legal, but it blurs the line between philanthropy and partisan politics. Critics say the OSF acts as a political instrument thinly veiled as charity. The primary accusation leveled against George Soros and his network is that he uses his immense wealth to subvert democratic processes and impose a radical left-wing agenda on sovereign nations. Critics argue the Open Society Foundations are not a neutral philanthropic entity, but a highly political operation. They point to the billions of dollars spent on funding activist groups, media outlets, political campaigns that align with Soros's personal ideology. This, they contend, amounts to a form of soft power more insidious than military force, because it operates under the guise of charity, bypassing the will of the electorate and distorting public discourse from within. One of the most potent lines of criticism focuses on Soros's influence on elections. In the United States, he has become one of the largest donors to the Democratic Party and its affiliated super PACs. More pointedly, critics highlight his targeted funding of local campaigns for district attorneys. Soros-backed candidates advocating for sweeping criminal justice reforms have won office in major cities. Opponents claim this is a deliberate strategy to weaken law enforcement and undermine public order from the inside out, effectively buying policy outcomes that could not be won through traditional legislative processes and bypassing the normal channels of democratic debate. Accusations of meddling extend far beyond American borders. In Eastern Europe, leaders like Hungary's Viktor Orbán have waged public campaigns against Soros, accusing him of orchestrating migration flows and attempting to destabilize their governments. They portray the OSF's funding of local NGOs as an attack on national sovereignty, framing these groups as foreign agents working to undermine traditional culture and national identity. Similar charges have been echoed in other countries, Macedonia, Israel, where governments have sought to pass laws restricting foreign funding for non-governmental organizations, directly targeting the OSF's operational model and its influence on domestic politics. The charge of a lack of transparency is another central pillar of the critique. While the OSF publishes annual reports and lists many of its grants, critics argue that the sheer complexity and scale of the network make true accountability impossible. Money flows through multiple intermediaries, making it difficult to connect the original source of funding to the actions of a specific protest group on the ground. This opacity, they claim, is intentional. For these critics, the Soros machine is a prime example of dark money in action, where immense financial power operates in the shadows to shape political reality. Defenders of George Soros and the Open Society Foundations argue the criticisms are not only misguided, but often rooted in bad faith and conspiracy theories. They contend that Soros is being unfairly singled out and demonized for engaging in philanthropic activities that are common among the ultra-wealthy. His supporters point out that conservative billionaires such as the Koch brothers have spent comparable, if not greater, sums of money building their own networks of think tanks, advocacy groups, political organizations to advance their free market, deregulatory agenda. To focus solely on Soros, they argue, is to ignore the broader landscape of money in politics and to apply a blatant double standard. The defense rests heavily on the argument that the OSF's work is both transparent and vital for democracy. They counter the charge of secrecy by pointing to the Foundation's publicly available tax filings and detailed annual reports, which disclose thousands of individual grants. The mission, they insist, is not to subvert democracy, but to strengthen it. The OSF is creating the very conditions necessary for a healthy public sphere to function. In this view, Soros is not imposing an agenda, but rather empowering local citizens to demand accountability from their own governments. Supporters also frame the OSF's work as a necessary counterbalance to the excesses of both state power and unregulated capitalism. When governments fail to protect the environment, the OSF funds climate activists. When corporations exploit workers, it funds labor rights organizations. When the justice system is broken, it funds reform advocates. From this perspective, the Foundation is not meddling, but filling a critical void left by the failures of official institutions to serve the people. Furthermore, defenders argue that many of the attacks against Soros employ dangerous and often anti-Semitic tropes. The image of a wealthy Jewish financier secretly manipulating global events is a classic anti-Semitic canard that has been used for centuries to stir up hatred and violence. By casting Soros as a shadowy puppet master, his critics are not just engaging in political disagreement, but are tapping into a dark history of conspiracy theories that scapegoat a minority group for complex social and economic problems. This tactic, supporters claim, is a deliberate effort to delegitimize the work of human rights defenders and shut down legitimate debate by smearing their benefactor with baseless and inflammatory accusations. The most complex aspect of the Soros machine lies in the gray zone where philanthropy, advocacy, direct political action converge. The legal distinction between charitable activity, C3 organizations, political lobbying, C4 organizations, is a line the OSF network navigates with expert precision. A foundation can legally fund a C3 group to conduct research and educate the public about an issue like climate change. That group can share its research with an affiliated C4 organization, which uses it to lobby lawmakers for specific green energy legislation. While legal, this process lets philanthropic dollars fuel a political outcome. This strategy is at the heart of the debate over Soros's influence. Is funding a group that promotes voter education a neutral civic good, or a partisan effort to mobilize a demographic likely to vote for one party? The answer depends on perspective. Supporters call it strengthening democracy by increasing participation. Critics call it a targeted political intervention to win an election. The ambiguity is the point. Modern campaign finance and nonprofit law create a vast space for wealthy donors to influence policy and politics without direct bribery. Consider criminal justice reform. OSF funded academic studies highlighting racial disparities in sentencing. OSF supported community groups demanding police accountability. OSF financed legal challenges to cash bail systems. At the same time, Soros personally donated millions to campaigns of district attorney candidates promising those reforms. Each action, viewed in isolation, can be defended as charitable, educational, or a legitimate political donation. But as a coordinated, multi-pronged strategy, it represents a powerful effort to transform a key public institution, driven by the financial power of a single individual. This gray zone is not unique to Soros. It's a feature of the modern landscape of power. Corporations fund think tanks to justify deregulation. Other billionaires finance charter school advocacy to reshape public education. The Soros network is one of the largest, most effective players in this game. The fundamental problem, legal and regulatory frameworks haven't kept pace with sophisticated ways money purchases influence. The result, immense power wielded in a space not quite public and not quite private, largely beyond the reach of meaningful democratic accountability. The story of George Soros and his financial machine is, in the end, a story about the precarious state of modern democracy. It reveals a system where private wealth has the power to set public agendas, mobilize political movements, fundamentally alter the social and legal fabric of nations. The Open Society Foundations have used billions to intentionally shape politics and civil life around the world. A force for good, a bulwark against tyranny and injustice, or a force for subversion, an assault on sovereignty and democratic will, remains the central, unresolved question and the source of ferocious debate. To move beyond the shouting match of saints and demons, the first essential step is a radical demand for transparency. This must go beyond glossy annual reports. It requires a clear, publicly accessible, easily searchable database that tracks spending from the original donor to the final recipient. When a billionaire's foundation gives millions to an intermediary organization that then funds dozens of smaller activist groups, the public has a right to see that entire money trail. True transparency lets citizens and journalists connect the dots and judge for themselves who is funding what and why. Second, we must have a serious public debate about rules governing money in politics and philanthropy. Legal loopholes that create vast gray zones of influence need to be closed. That may mean clearer and stricter limits on what counts as charitable activity versus political lobbying. It may mean new regulations on the role of super PACs and other independent expenditure groups. The goal is not to silence speech or end philanthropy, but to ensure ordinary citizens' voices are not drowned out by the megaphone of extreme wealth, regardless of whether that wealth comes from the left or the right. Ultimately, the issue is one of trust. Democracies rely on faith that decisions are made through open debate and fair elections, not in the boardrooms of foundations or at the behest of wealthy benefactors. When citizens believe the system is rigged, that policy is for sale and powerful, unelected figures are pulling the strings, that trust erodes and the foundations of democracy begin to crumble. The controversy around George Soros is a symptom of that deeper crisis. The only cure is to reassert that in a true democracy, the power of the people must be greater than the power of money. I am Ray Montoya, and this is Economics.